Well, the French had a sort of a three-part kind of definition of somebody who wasn't quite up to snuff intellectually, and those divisions were moron, idiot, and imbecile. And the question is, which one of the three is Matthew Iglesias? Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and in order to find out whether the guy's a moron, an idiot, or an imbecile, we thought we might bring up the cause of it because you know how kind-natured we are, and we don't like to throw names hither and yon at people. But Matt had a tweet that I was sure was mocking. I was quite sure it was just a joke or trolling people. But turns out from the follow-up tweets, no, turns out he probably meant it. So here we go. Here's what Matthew Iglesias tweeted just last week. Maybe we should just go to $150 an hour minimum wage with no phase-in period and let the Fed figure out how to make it work. Guys, I've been saying this forever. I really have been saying this forever, and I thought that's where Matt was going with it. When people say we need a livable wage, we have to get $15 an hour. $15 an hour sounds reasonable to people. You know, it doesn't sound really ridiculous for somebody who's putting in 40 hours a week, although minimum wage was never designed to do that. So the question is, if you can legislate $15 an hour, why not make it $150 an hour? Why not make it $150,000 an hour, Scott? Why do you think this guy could possibly take something like that seriously?
Well, speaking as a man who once worked for 80 cents an hour on a hog farm, and in addition, one fine, fat, suckling pig that we could raise for the 4-H show, so
Wow.
which was like the benefits on the farm, when I was a kid. Anyway, I think that that there's a fundamental fallacy here, as you have pointed out, regarding the amount of the minimum wage, and that is that minimum wage jobs were not the kind of jobs that were intended to be a living wage. In fact, one of my first employers said that for the first 3 years, you ought to pay me to work here. And I said, well, yeah, you're probably right, because the education I got during that time, it was like a paid college education. So I was glad to have it. That said, however, I think the risk here for conservatives and Republicans is that we'll jump in and start to debate what could be a livable minimum wage.
That's
when
right.
in fact, the real issue here is who gets to determine wages.
That's right.
If it is the government, whether that be the federal government or some, the municipal government of Seattle, then I think you've got the shoe on the wrong foot. And that's the risk that conservatives always run in these debates. It's like the Affordable Care Act debate, where we, instead of saying, no, the federal government really has no role in health care for individuals anywhere, we instead began debating what should be the boundaries and the nature and the amount and the coverage and all that kind of stuff.
30-round magazines on an assault rifle, when in fact the point is, do you have a right to defend your life, yes or no?
And when we start doing that, we've lost the fight already.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty true. Steve, my feeling was that, as I said, I didn't think he could possibly be serious, because my feeling was, if you asked the person on the street if a person working at McDonald's should make $15 an hour, I bet you most people would say yes. If you ask them if they should make $150 an hour, I bet you everybody would say no. And then the question becomes, why? Why would you say no to $150 an hour?
Oh, there are all kinds of reasons. That's an intelligent question, and Scott just gave it a sort of an intelligent and subtle answer to this whole debate. But I think we need to get back to the point, which is proving what a moron, imbecile, and idiot Matt Iglesias is.
A trifecta.
Yes, he's all three. It's embrace the healing power of and. As Ed Morrissey likes to say, look, okay, he says, let the Fed figure it out. Well, first of all, the Fed's just going to have to deposit, I don't know, $1 million in every small business's bank account so they can afford to pay their employees next week with the no phase-in period. This is lunacy. And you think about not just the inflation, but the fact that he talks about we're going to wipe out this $20 trillion in federal debt. Oh,
by
great.
inflating our way out of it.
Yeah, guess who holds that debt? China holds trillions of dollars in that debt. The Fed holds trillions of dollars in that debt. Your retirement fund holds that debt. You may have that in a mutual fund. All of these people are going to have their savings wiped out. And I have to tell you, World wars have started over less. Civil wars have started over less. You can't just collapse the 20% of the global economy to go, hey, we're going to feel good about all that money we couldn't afford to spend during the Obama administration. Because that's what he wants. He wants to clear the ledger of 8 years of Obama. And boy, so do I. But unlike Matt Iglesias, I don't want to be a moronic, imbecile idiot when I do it.
Well, and Bill, let me just add that using the terms moron, imbecile, and idiot in the same breath with trifecta invites unflattering comparisons.
I call imbecile.
All right, well.
There's a lot to say about this. And first of all, I think it's one of the points that Steve mentioned. That is simply the progressive idea that if you owe people a lot of money, you can just simply say, well, we're going to have a law come by and just legislate it out. They believe you can legislate $15 an hour. If you can legislate $15 an hour, why not $150? People would say, well, $150 an hour, a guy who flips hamburgers is not worth $150 an hour. Correct. So what is he worth? He's worth what he is able to get. He's worth what the job pays, and you cannot get in there and do more than that. Scott mentioned in our backstage show that if flipping burgers was as hard as preparing a law brief, then you could get a case for the guy making $150, but it isn't. So instead of people getting $15 an hour, what happens is the companies either can't afford to do it or they pass the price increase on to the consumers. And now, in the same way that shale oil, which was never really profitable until crude got up in the stratosphere, now there are alternative means of doing it, including like check-in self-kiosks at McDonald's, and pretty soon I've heard they're working on a hamburger flipping machine, and this is what happens when you violate the laws of economics as well as nature. But Matt, just real quick for you especially, of all the things that you said, the one that really was the most disturbing was the follow-up tweet where you said, yeah, we'll just let inflation inflate our way out of our debts. That's because you have debts and your political system is based on debts, and you think that money grows on trees and you just keep chopping them down. But if you inflate your way out of debt, you also inflate your way out of savings, Matt. I know this might be a little tricky for you, but let me walk you through it. If you gave your entire income for your life, for 30 years, and you invested it in your house, and you sell the house for $300,000, $300,000 is a pretty decent pot of money. But if we let President Iglesias in charge of the economy, you'd have a $300,000 sale on your house, and coffee would cost $1,000 a cup. And your house would be worth 300 cups of coffee. And this is who gets destroyed. Everybody gets destroyed, but mostly poor people get destroyed because they're the one who have the least disposable income. And inflation is not progressive. Inflation applies to everybody, so the poor are the hardest hit. And it just leaves me wondering why progressives hate poor people as much as they do. And it also leaves me quite aware of the fact, guys, that every time I think I'm going to run into some really solid progressive argument and peel back the curtain and see the mighty Oz there, you peel back the curtain and there's no one there. No one there. Just the levers running themselves. Matt, you might want to take a fundamental economics course before you try this kind of thing. It's a free country, but that doesn't mean you can't use your freedom to prove that you're either an idiot, an imbecile, or a moron, or in some cases, all three. Thanks very much for joining us, folks. Thanks again to the members who make this possible, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, but think of how good that $65 Big Mac must taste.
Woo!